In this video, we will reinstall the feed regulator, feed fork, and feed rock shaft all back into this lovely late model Singer 99. Let's get started. First, let's go over all of the parts that you should have out and ready for this video. You need your feed regulator. Parts of the feed regulator include the little thumb screw that you're going to use, the little stitch length indicator. You'll have a spring for the indicator and a tiny little spring that goes inside the thumb screw itself, teeny tiny. Stitch length indicator plate, 2 screws for the stitch length indicator plate. The feed fork, and your feed fork should have a little roller that sets on it. You should have one larger hinge screw and spring washer. And for the bottom of the feed fork, you will have an eccentric screw and a nut. You'll need your feed rock shaft and 2 centers and 2 nuts that are going to hold the feed rock shaft in place. You will definitely want your screwdrivers as well as a 9/16 wrench and a 3/8 wrench. So first, let's get this part back in. It's going to be fun. Reinstalling the feed regulator itself is a notoriously tricky step, but I do not want you to worry because I'm going to give you a couple tips that will help. First thing I want you to do is to take your actual feed regulator and your little screw that's going to go in the front, and we're going to temporarily screw that in. So it's going to give us something to hold on to. Next, I want you to take your feed fork and put a little drop of oil on it. I've already oiled mine, and slide the roller on now. Check it real quick. Make sure it's spinning freely. If it's not, you need to clean it up a little bit more. Last thing we're going to do to prepare ourselves is we're going to take the hinge screw that's going to be screwing in to this hole on the feed regulator and go ahead and put the washer on it now. And I like to oil the hinge screw because it's going to help the washer stick for us. And the washer with the 3 little prongs, you'll see how they kind of point up. If you turn them one way, the prongs are actually sort of pointing up. With them pointing up towards the ceiling, slide them down onto the hinge screw like that. Now, if you have a screw starter, which I do, I like to go ahead and get it ready for me to grab. And I'm just going to get it on my screw starter and set it aside. If you don't have this, don't worry. Just get the spring washer on. So the way we're going to do this is using the parts to work together. The feed fork's going to slide up into the bottom of the machine with the roller facing towards you, facing towards the hand wheel. So that's the first thing that I'm going to do. I'm just going to slide it up in. Do you see the roller there? To just about there. You should be able to see the roller. Now I'm going to take the feed regulator and I am going to put it into this hole here. The roller on the feed fork needs to fit into this groove. So holding it and sliding it into the hole, I'm going to use the opening in the side to kind of help me line everything up. And what you'll notice is when you start pushing up on this feed fork, it's going to fit onto the cam that's on the main shaft. But if you put it on the cam before you get the feed regulator on, you might struggle a little bit. So I line it up, I know it's kind of in vicinity, and then I pull it back and just lower the feed regulator in, and I can tell, I can feel the roller and the feed fork are together onto the feed regulator now. So while I have everything in place, I'm going to carefully flip this machine up on its nose. This is where you kind of hold your breath. So now I still have my little screw here I can hold on to. I'm going to see if I can tip this towards you so you can see what I'm doing. Right down in that hole right here, I can see that the screw hole for the screw, the hinge screw I want to put in, is all lined up. And before anything moves out of place, get that screw down into the hole on the feed regulator and get it started. I can switch over to my regular screwdriver now. We're just going to tighten this down. You don't need to have it super tight yet, but go ahead and make sure it's not going anywhere. So that's tightened down. Now the roller and the feed fork and the feed regulator will all stay together. I don't need to worry about that. So what do we do next? So the next step I want to do is go ahead and reinstall the feed rock shaft. Then I'll finish reassembling the feed regulator. I like having this in place because it allows me to go ahead and secure the bottom end of the feed fork to the shaft. It gives me stability. I can see how my hand wheel is going to turn and all of that. So in order to do this, you want to take your two centers. You need to have those ready. And if you haven't, if you didn't do it while you were cleaning, I want you to oil inside the ends of the rock shafts right here on each end. Go ahead and put a drop of oil. So both of the ends here have been oiled. Now we're going to put in the feed rock shaft. And the way that it goes is not like this. It goes like that. And so see, mine has like two little cutouts here. It's easy to see that's clearance that I need. Now before I screw my centers in, I'm going to put a little drop of oil on both of those as well. So they just screw in really easy. But go ahead and hold your feed rock shaft up with this part here pointing towards the bed of the machine, and then just start screwing in your centers. We'll worry about the nuts in a minute. We're not too worried about that yet. Now this is an adjustment point as well. This is going to help us position our feed dogs in the needle plate. So I'm not really too worried about tightening anything down at the moment. I just want to make sure that I have it secure. If it's too tight, you won't be able to wiggle it. If it's too loose, you'll have a lot of lateral play back and forth. You don't want that either. A tiny bit, fine. Too much, it's going to make a very noisy machine. So I have this center screwed in. My feed rock shaft is secured. Now I can go ahead and connect my feed fork. So our eccentric screw is going to go in this end of the feed fork and then through this hole here in the feed rock shaft, and then we're going to put a nut on. All of these are still adjustment points, so they're not going to be where we want them. We're still going to play around with them later once we get other parts on the machine. Go ahead and oil up your eccentric screw, lift up your feed fork and slide it. You're gonna have to kind of line things up, and if you feel like your feed fork's not coming down low enough to meet the rock shaft, you can wiggle the hand wheel, you can wiggle the rock shaft. Everything should line up. Now that I have it all together, I'm going to go ahead and spin this little nut on. And just, you know what, you can tighten it by hand. Maybe you don't break out the wrench just yet. But I want to test something out. Now that I have this all together, everything's secure, nothing's going to fall, I want to try spinning my hand wheel. If I can't get that hand wheel to spin freely, then I have something wrong. Something's not working right. This is good. We can go ahead and finish the feed regulator. Now let's go ahead and remove this screw that we put in here temporarily. We're going to start with this first. This screw is going to go down inside this little sort of thumb nut here, and you should be able to just start screwing it in. But before you get it all the way down, if you had this little tiny spring, do you see the little loop on the end? You're going to pop it in the hole on your screw with that loop pointing out towards you. Now I find because this spring is poking out, it's kind of hard to get it in, but I'll see if I can show you. The little loop on the end of the spring, if you have it pointing, so let's see here. It's going to be, if I turn it this way, the loop is running vertical. It will be a lot easier to screw down the screw than if you have it turned sideways, because that loop has a curve and it will just ease its way in to this portion of the little thumb screw here. There we go. If you don't have it turned, it can be really frustrating. So let's just go ahead and kind of get this all the way down for now, as far as you can get it to go. That's as far as this one goes. Now, We have two holes here on our feed regulator. This hole here on the right is for this. Now, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take our stitch length indicator plate and slide that baby in there like that, right? You want to take your stitch length indicator and this funny looking little spring, and do you see you should have a end that's coiled tighter, and then we have a fluted end here. We're going to slide the indicator into the spring so the fluted end is on the coiled, the smaller coil. Then we're going to slide it into the hole right there. Now I can take my stitch length indicator plate with the screw and everything should line up perfectly. I'm going to go ahead and start screwing this into the feed regulator. And I'll be able to do a certain amount of this by hand, but then I'll have to get my screwdriver and get in that slot to finish tightening it down the rest of the way. And that is as tight as it will go. Now, see how springy this is with that little spring behind it? Just make sure that that stays in place. It helps if you kind of keep everything about in the middle. Now we can put these two screws back on. I'm going to lay it down to do that. So I don't know if you can see it, but my little stitch length indicator, it's still got a little bit of red on it. I decided not to paint it, but you could put a little bit of red nail polish on the end or something like that if you wanted to. I'm just going to go ahead and pop these screws in now while everything is where it's supposed to be. One and one more. Then you just want to snug these down. Very good. Now, everything's in place. I'll flip it back up. Okay, so now everything is working here. You can see my little red pin telling me where I'm at as far as stitch length. My hand wheel is spinning freely. There's no problems there. Go ahead and put a drop of oil down in this end hole right here now. You'll be oiling the cam for the feed fork and your machine will thank you after all the cleaning. All we need to do is just pop those centers on just so we don't lose them. When I said centers, I meant nuts. So just for the center, just screw those nuts on. We're not tightening these down right now because we have adjustments to make here, but at least all the parts are together and you won't be looking for them later. So here we go. And I feel like this rock shaft might be a little snug, but when we get the rest of the parts in, we need to put the hook in and the needle bar and all of that so we can time everything. So we really wait till the very end to do all of the fine adjustments. That's just how it works with this machine. So very good. Great job now. It's looking more like a sewing machine again. When we come back, be ready to reinstall the hook and the pitman arm and all of that. It's kind of all one process that we have to do together. So that's what we will be doing on the next video. If you liked this one, please give it a thumbs up. That helps my little channel and it tells YouTube that these videos are helpful and they'll share them with other people just like you. All right, see you guys again really soon. Bye.